Hey everyone, welcome back to Be Not Afraid. Today I'm really excited for my guest, who is Al Jackson, former Utah State Senator, and he also works with the Woodson Institute, as well as his own business, which is the Jackson Group. And I really wanted to bring him on because I got to meet him just a couple of weeks ago while Bob Woodson was in town. And just listening to them, I felt so inspired. And I really feel like we need more inspiration, kind of less of the negative and more of the inspiring things. So welcome, Al.
Thank you, Cari. It's my privilege and honor to be here with you. And we that wasn't the first time we met. We met well before that. So we just got reacquainted. How's that?
Right. And then I was supposed to interview you about a year ago and completely lost it because that's the way my brain works. And so it was glad to.
I'm used to being an afterthought. That's okay.
That's terrible. um, so I'm just a person who jumps into the conversation. I don't want to waste anyone's time. So um, I believe that our nation is in a crisis of kind of mediocrity and low standards. And I think that Utah is also very much in that same place. And so I want to talk about the solutions to get ourselves out of it and also the problems. How long ago has it been since you were in Utah?
Oh boy. Because of my business, I'm out there almost once a month, but we moved away from Utah in 2016. So we've been back on the East Coast and we've been here since then.
And then you also are you're also on the board for one other group, aren't you?
Yes, Moms for America. That's
Moms,
that's my organization. Yes.
Moms for America.
Right. So we are engaged in the fight along with you.
Thank you. We need people to be engaged in the fight. So one of the things that they talk about with the fight is that they're helping specifically minorities, that we need to do this because America is in a pandemic of racism. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the adversary is using the topic and issue of race to divide us, and mainly not only that, but to distract us from the real problems. The real problems. I mean, if you look at the Black family in particular, 75% of the kids that come into the world, they don't have a mom and a dad in the home, and it just leads to chaos. And at the end of the day, that's really at the heart of the problem. But they don't want to look at that problem because they've been part of creating that issue. And so it's just easier to just point to racism. And they don't want us to understand and know our history, because if you know your history, and you do an incredible job playing Harriet Tubman. I mean, she is the epitome, the example of the victories that are possible. Because during those times, I mean, she overcame monumental obstacles, racism that was just written into the code. I mean, it was slavery, for heaven's sakes. And for her to do what she did should inspire us, because we are in no way near the kind of environment that she faced. And we are dishonoring her. We're dishonoring Frederick Douglass. We're dishonoring Phyllis Wheatley, Booker T. Washington. We're dishonoring their sacrifice by the way we're behaving today. And it was all about personal responsibility, perseverance, and resilience. And we're not teaching our kids those things.
And it's so crazy to me because I just recently had a person say that the work that I do is irresponsible. Um, and I just thought, I think it's irresponsible to teach people that they're incapable of doing for themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, we were sent here by a Heavenly Father who loves us and sent us here to succeed, not to fail. And either the atonement of Jesus Christ works, Cari, or it doesn't. And it's so interesting when you look at the other side and the name calling. They really are calling out what they are. Yes. So what they're doing is irresponsible. I mean, it's astounding. You look at what the Supreme Court just ruled on regarding affirmative action in colleges and universities, and it's astounding to me, and I know it is to you, right, that I wouldn't want anyone to lower standards to accommodate me or give me an excuse for failure. That's the most debilitating thing that you can do to an individual, as opposed to, so what we do today is we pat our kids on the head instead of guiding them to the challenge,
Right.
guiding them to the challenge. And you remember what Booker T. Washington said when he talked about, he compared the white boy and his circumstance and the black boy, and what the black boy has to do to get ahead. He actually is better off because he has fought, he's scraped, he's persevered, and he comes out stronger, as opposed to the white privileged kid. And I don't want to come across as speaking in generalities,
Right.
but that it's, you get the idea.
Yeah, well, one is building true resilience. And whenever you talk about that, whenever you say that our goal is to build resilience, and you say, well, here it is, I come from this circumstance, and I've climbed my way up and I figured it out. Let me talk to you. And they say,
Right.
no, it's not the right experience. It's not the right type of resilience.
Right. Right.
And it's crazy because the resilience that I've seen, and I thought this was phenomenal when Mr. Woodson stood up, he's 86 years old, I think, and he stands up and he says, stop coddling our children. And I just wanted to just jump up and scream and hallelujah, because I was just like, yes, stop coddling our children, because it doesn't build resilience.
Right.
I have a teenage child. So I have this teenage child, and, the majority of kids his age will play video games nonstop. And sometimes they'll sneak messages into the games, sneak political ideology into the games. Well, in my house, you have to match the time that you spend gaming with work, with whether that's gardening or actually working a job or something, because this builds the steps of appreciation.
Right.
So why then do you believe, because I have my own theory, but I'll let you talk. Why then do you think that they're sending these messages of resilience that isn't?
I think what the goal here is to create a dependence. And the adversary will do whatever he has to garner power. I mean, at the end of the day, they could care less about the inner city kid or the kid in these underserved areas. It's about staying in political power. And the best way to do that is to create dependency among the people. And in order to do that, you either give them things or you remind them constantly of the injuries to be avoided, as opposed to, as Bob always says, the victories that are possible. Because if you're focused on the victories that are possible, then you have an inner drive to succeed for yourself, as opposed to looking for someone to lift you up. And it's so hypocritical when you look at, and it's mostly coming from the elites, Cari. We know this, it's coming from the elites, the people who have made it.
Right.
And they made it, but you can't. And so instead of sharing their journey and inspiring others to follow in their footsteps, they're basically saying you can't make it, that America's racist. Do you remember the Democratic National Convention back in 2020? And Michelle Obama had the audacity, while she's speaking from their multi-million-dollar home in Nantucket, looking in the camera, talking about racism.
She was wearing $3,000 boots.
You cannot make this up. I mean, it's astounding. So, but you know what? Here's the good news. People are waking up. They are waking up. And the other side, and I hate to call them the other side, because they're our brothers and sisters. They are allowed to have a Saul on the way to Damascus experience, where they become Paul. And we have to grant them grace enough. And I love what Bob talks about, ill intention versus ill informed. But we do know there's some ill intention on the other side. That there really is, particularly
there's
from
a grift, right? There's a grift.
Right.
There's
right.
one of the things that Bob Woodson says is that you guys look for Josephs for Pharaohs. Um,
Yes.
but on top of that, and the people that fight the hardest are the grifters, the people who are making money. So the things that I do, I don't charge for. I
Right.
just go out and tell the story of Harriet Tubman or teach a program to kids because I want them to understand that just because I have my skin tone doesn't mean I hate or resent them.
Right.
These are important messages for me. But the grift is thousands of dollars for a speaking engagement to talk about how oppressed they are. Meanwhile, they have no understanding of what that working class or working class poor person really
Right.
wants.
They never asked those individuals. Like Nicole Hannah Jones, when she came out to Utah, how much was she paid for that visit?
Right.
And Bob Woodson came out the following month on his own dime,
Wow. Yeah.
on his own dime. And so they that's all you need to know. Yeah, but
Yeah.
they have, what did Booker T. Washington say? There's a class of blacks who profit from keeping blacks down because it pays. It pays.
So what I like in this too, and a lot of people, may take offense, but what I like in this too is that plantation mentality. But it's not just the mental slavery. There's also the overseers. And oftentimes the overseers were black themselves. And they
Yes.
would crack the whip on other people because hey, it got them treated better. Even when I tell Harriet's story, I talk about how she couldn't trust every single one because some people would go out and spy for their masters.
Right.
And
Right.
that's what I see. I see people who will go out and say, "Oh, I'm a victim. I've never ever been oppressed a day in my life, but
Right.
I'm the victim. So give all your
Right.
money to me," And I just am like,
Puppets. They're
"No,
puppets. So
puppets.
so
Yes.
Harriet Tubman, I Bob told this story, and he talked about the slave chasers who were black who were going after Harriet, and it was white people who helped rescue her. So this notion that all black people are good and all white people are bad is just ridiculous.
Yes, absolutely." And I do think that people are starting to realize that. But so I believe that systemic racism is real.
Oh, of course it is.
But I just think that what it is the same thing that they're doing now. So they started off with telling the black people, you can't do, we need to help you, look for the anger. They went into communities that were thriving. They were thriving before the 1930s when liberation theology came in.
Right. I'm glad you said that. That's a very good statement.
But they were. So they had these amazing families and fathers were proud and they would raise their kids to love God and to want to do better. They had an appreciation, one thing, I think, because slavery wasn't that far out, right? So they could look back and say, I remember my pa as as a sharecropper. Now we're so far removed that they can repeat those same things in history in another direction. So it's not always about race. Teaching this new generation to be upset and to find bitterness. I just think bitterness cripples people.
Well, yeah, well, that's a tool of the adversary to create anger and division and contention. Because wherever there is a spirit of contention and anger, that Jesus Christ is not there.
Yeah.
That's why when you promote messages of hope and inspiration, then the spirit works. The
And I,
spirit works to inspire you.
and I feel like that's the reason why there's such a target to root out Christianity.
That's at the end of the day, Cari, that's the ultimate goal. It really is. It's the ultimate goal is to replace God with government.
Yes.
And the godless are leading that fighting effort.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how'd that happen in Utah? Because Utah, we moved here because we thought that this would be the place where God and faith and religion are are protected, regardless of whether or not, because I'm not the predominant religion. Um, I'm former and I'm not anti, but
Right.
but I'm not the predominant religion here. But I knew it. I mean, I used to be the gospel doctrines teacher. The things that I'm seeing people fall for today make no sense at all.
Right, right. Are you also astounded by the apathy? I think that was the biggest surprise for me when we moved to Utah was the apathy, all is well in Zion attitude. And
Yeah.
it that's going to change. It's going to change as things become increasingly worse. And so the key thing is for you and I, Cari, and folks like us, is to keep sharing the message, keep bearing witness, keep bearing testimony. Because here's the thing: when things get really bad, we have to have enough people on the ground who know what to do. And so the staff upon which this nation will lean when things get bad are families that know. Families that know. So that's why what you're doing is incredibly critically important. First within the four walls of our home, and then out into the community.
Right. And I always tell people when people call me and they're just so discouraged because yes, apathy, it's apathy. And then the second that they wake up, they go, whoa, this is way heavier than I thought it was going to be. And it is. Like, you would never have assumed that knowing what has happened in history in the past, knowing about Africa and Marxism and Hutu and the Tutsi, Lenin and Stalin and Mao, knowing all of these things, you would think we would not openly put that in our schools.
Yeah.
And we are.
Well, we are. Well, it started with Horace Mann back in the 1850s, way back then.
Oh, wow.
And when he started promoting these socialistic ideas in the school, the people during that time period told him to get lost. We're not doing that, but the seeds were planted. And then John Dewey in the early 1900s, who to a lot of people is the father of education, picked up on those ideals. And he started out at Columbia Teachers College. That's where he took those ideas. And that was the institution that trained our teachers, because they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly what they're doing. If they could, what did Abraham Lincoln say? He said, the philosophy of the classroom in one generation is the philosophy of government in the next.
Wow. That's scary in terms of the philosophy of the classroom right now.
Right.
Or the lack of.
Right.
One of the things that I found most astonishing was when one of the school board representatives presented that the African American population is 16% proficiency rate for their kids. 1-6 for their kids. And you have to remember, Ibram X. Kendi says that whenever there is inequitable outcomes, racism is there. So then we lower the bar for all kids, because instead of going, we should be sick to our stomachs about the idea that there are some people who think it's okay to be at 16% proficiency rate. We should be sick to our stomachs at that, I think.
Ridiculous. And I heard when I was out there with you that kids of color actually go into the school system with greater proficiency than that. It just gets worse over time. And Utah has a 90% graduation rate and overall 49% proficiency. That's embarrassing. But that number is probably higher than the average in the country, is my assumption. And so the statistics are startling. That is scary. And you look at
comes down to things like Portrait of a Graduate.
Right.
You go ahead and then
So the school system, and I've been involved in some training for the Canyon School District regarding diversity and inclusion. And I have to give the superintendent credit there, because he didn't want to go the woke path of calling one group oppressors and the other group as the oppressors. And so,
and this was Canyon School District?
Canyon School District. Yeah, Rick Robbins is the superintendent. He said we had approached it with the principle of belonging, the law of the harvest, and race is only just a small part of who we are.
Yes.
And we're not going to lead with race. And Well, I lost my train of thought here, but what I was basically trying to say is the school board came down with some language and verbiage that basically said they highlighted, they didn't say kids of color, but they called them kids from unique and difficult circumstances. Right there, you're labeling them before, as soon as they walk in the classroom, they have a bullseye on them. And that goes back to what I said before. Instead of guiding the child to the challenge and treating all the kids equal, it's let's pat them on the head. And that's resulted in what you just highlighted, 16% proficiency. That's embarrassing.
Well, and it's not just the kids who, in fact, oftentimes the kids who come from hard backgrounds. And I'm specifically speaking poverty, not drugs, not alcohol, not incarceration. I'm talking just poverty here. A lot of times those parents are the most vigilant on making sure that their kids are doing well in school. And I'm coming from the perspective of a para-educator. Okay, those kids, oftentimes who can barely speak English, their parents, they are so strict with those kids, making sure that they are academically at a point of excellence. Whereas the kids with privilege, the kids who want for nothing, the kids who, the second that they get in the car, they've got a tablet, if they don't have their phone in class the whole day, those kids are also lowering, like they're throwing away their quote unquote privilege.
Right.
Under
right.
under equity, or what is that? Because I don't know, I'm very grateful for the status that I have in life. I'm, I'm a middle class mama, enough to be able to stay at home and raise my child. But and I feel like that's just the right spot, because I know that I want more for him than we have. But I also know that what we have, we worked for.
That's right. And you chose that path. I mean, life's about circumstances.
Yes.
What did Bob came up with that great story of Frederick Douglass, and the worst time on the plantation was during Christmas. There was during the Christmas break where the slave master would serve alcohol because he wanted alcohol and irresponsibility tied to freedom. And then some of the slaves, though, didn't succumb to that. Some of the slaves either worked during that 6-day period to earn money to buy their freedom, or they visited their families. Yes. And so regardless of the circumstance, Cari, you have a decision to make. You have a choice to make. You can choose how you want to proceed in life. And that's, to me, that's God's greatest gift to us, is agency. And so we have the agency to either act or be acted upon.
Right.
And you've chosen to act.
Right. And from where I come from the very, very bottom of the barrel of the foster system, with like 18 homes in 9 years, where I'm at is something to be proud of.
Absolutely. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Eastern Washington,
Okay.
in Moses Lake.
Okay. I know about Moses Lake. A lot of farms up there. So you were in the foster care system in Moses Lake, Washington.
Yes.
Wow.
And I put myself in. I put myself in the foster care when I was 8. So, because my life was that bad. And so when people want to coddle me, I just sort of navigate through that, and I'm grateful. I could be the biggest lefty victim on the planet.
Right. That's exactly right. But you've chosen not to do that. What an incredible story. And you've got street cred. You've got street cred. Nobody, I know.
But they do. They do. The people that are selected, the people that are appointed by our governor here in Utah, they go after me like I don't have a right to talk. I don't live in the right location or whatever reason. And I'm sitting there going, my level of street cred is way beyond anything.
Absolutely. You definitely got street cred. That's why, sister, keep going. What you're doing. I'm telling you, there's a silent majority out there that's rooting for you. And the God in heaven is guiding your steps. No doubt about it. You're an incredible person. Thank you.
Well, what I want people to understand, because I am always trying to reach that moderate. I'm always trying to reach that person who maybe isn't a person of faith. Um, it doesn't have to be that it's faith that guides you. Although I will say that in all of the people that I've spoke to who have overcome great things, and I'm talking about Marxism and communism, um, it has been it has been their faith that has kept them rooted. But there's also just the basic Judeo-Christian value system, regardless of whether or not you practice the faith. That
That's a
is,
very good point. Yep.
those
Talk,
are the
talk,
standards that have set success.
right. Talk to somebody from Venezuela or China.
Right,
They not a lot of church going on there, but they know what it's like to live in communism. They know.
right,
And it goes against our inherent desire to be free.
right. Or to have family and to
Yeah,
matter. Because
right.
all of this stuff about, well, we want to make sure that these kids know that they matter, you're taking away. When we embrace these ideas, when we embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is the opposite, it's diversity, exclusion, and
It,
equity means equal outcomes.
it's reverse racism. That's what it is.
Yes.
It's reverse racism.
Well, and some
Yeah.
people will say it's not reverse racism, it's just racism, period.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
we're teaching people to hate.
Yeah.
We are teaching children who have come, we have come generations, and we should be so grateful for Martin Luther King's dream. We had reached that. We had reached the point where the
It
majority of
did.
people, it didn't matter the color of their skin, right?
Right.
It mattered the value that you brought to the table.
That's right.
And then
That's
we started going backwards from that. And you have to ask why. Why would
we
you want to be miserable?
you know what, Cari? I've thought a lot about that. I read a lot of Shelby Steele. I follow Bob Woodson. You know, freedom, the cost of freedom, it's hard. It's hard. And you know what? So we had a choice to make when we had those civil rights victories in the 60s. We had a choice to make. We could either jump on board and embrace those victories and move forward and progress and lift ourselves up our quote unquote bootstrap, so to speak, or we could take the other path, which is let's blame those who oppress us and make them our liberators, because you know what, that's an, in some regard, Cari, that's an easier path. It's an easier path because freedom, you're the perfect example of that. It wasn't easy, the choices that you had to make. It was not easy. And some people don't want to do that fight, Cari. They'd rather have somebody hand them something as opposed to work for it for themselves. Freedom is not free. You have to work for it, and not everybody's wired that way.
Hard for me to understand that.
Yes.
As
But
somebody
but
who realized
does that resonate with you though? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
it does, but it's just another form of enslavement.
Yes,
So
that's
I was, and so it resonates, but I can't comprehend it because that, during 2020 with the whole I can't breathe,
yes.
that's what I feel like when people tell me that I cannot think for myself. What I see coming into our schools and coming into our community is a recolonizing,
Yes. Oh,
you know,
absolutely. Yeah.
and like you said before, turning to statism.
Yeah.
And I once the once the scales have fallen off of your eyes, there's no way to go back. You can't just go back to sleep once you've been awake, and once you realize that the people who support these programs in our schools, the people who are making businesses take on these programs, they are filthy rich themselves, and they're every single color, but mostly white. So
Oh, that's right. That's exactly right. And they can make it, but then isn't that astounding? They want to change the system after they've made it.
yeah,
They
it's
made it. So I want to respond to your thought, because have you read Up from Slavery from Booker T. Washington?
I have not. I have it on my bookshelf. So,
It's a worthy read. There was a statement he makes in there where he talks about when they first found out they were free, because he was born a slave, 1865, Civil War's over, the news comes to the plantation, euphoria. People are excited, they're crying, they're just crying these tears of joy. And then he said this, which is so interesting. He wrote this. He said, after a little while, when everybody calmed down, they all started to look at each other like, oh crap, now we're free. What are we going to do now? Because it's settled in on them that now it's up to us. We got to figure this out.
yeah,
We got to figure this out. So,
it
and
takes
I
work.
assume it takes work. And I bet you some of them said, man, I'd rather stay here on the plantation. But I'm sure the majority of them said, no, we're out of here. But that realization set in. And so that gift of freedom is not free. We have to work for it.
Right.
And just can't thank you enough for all that you're doing. Because what you're doing, you stay on that wall, Cari.
Well, yesterday I was teaching a class. I was teaching a class of 15-year-olds about liberty, and we were talking about the bread and circus, where they would go and similar to the Christmas event, right? But the thing is that it wasn't just a matter of getting them drunk. It these little tiny things that they were giving that should have been a person's anyways. Their wine and their little bit of food and money, cheese. Um, they would then turn to their masters and say, "Oh, praise the king! Oh, praise the emperor!" Right? So then it completely messed with their minds. And that's how come I can't hate the people who strive to make my life miserable, who strive to slander me or whatever else, because that first generation, they resent being a slave, regardless of what color they are, because there's way more slaves than just black slaves on the plantation, right?
Right.
So they resent it. But the next generation who's born into it, they accept that as that's what they get. That's their lot in life. And they even accept it to the point that they resent anybody who gets off of it, gets away from it.
Right. That's
They're the
what we're
traitor, right?
right.
Did you
That's what we see that now. When you did the kids, did that tell me how did the kids respond to that story?
the kids were literally like, it's a small class, it's a homeschool co-op, and one of the kids just sat there and he's like, I hate school, I'm not going to enjoy this. And so I showed it to them on a video, and then afterwards we have a Socratic seminar and we talk about it, and I just ask them questions and they just answer. Everybody is in a truly safe space so they can give their opinions, no judgment, right? And this kid just goes, he just was like, my mind is blown. And so I started asking them questions like, so like one of the clips on the video, and this series is called the Academy of Ideas, if anybody's watching and interested. But one of the clips shows that and shows the people enslaved, and then the next one shows people, it's a cartoon, and it shows people walking with their phones in their faces, and
Wow.
how that's our bread and circus. Our phones have changed the way that we feel about work.
Oh my gosh.
But I wanted to ask you, coming here to Utah, I know when I came here to Utah, people were like, how can you go live there? It's super white. Did you feel that way when you moved here?
So my wife doesn't look like me. And so over time, I've adapted to it. When I first started going out there, I got tired of being asked if I played for the Jazz or what I did for a living, because they all, yeah. Yeah, those are the two questions you get. But over time, Utah to me is a land of opportunity, particularly if you're a person of color, because I think there's enough good people there that look at you from the content of your character as opposed to your color. Now, is there covert racism that's out there? Absolutely, and most of it I would attribute to they're just not used to being around a lot of people of color, and so and Utah is unique because we're not all people of color in that state are not clustered in one area or little pockets around. They're all over. I mean, they're really spread out. And so that makes it kind of harder. To me, it makes it a little harder because finding those people that look like you makes it more difficult because you're so spread out. That's why when Bob Woodson and I were out there last month and seeing that collection of people of all hues was so inspiring. I'm telling you, Bob is fired up. We're going to do we're going to get some resources to the folks at the grassroots level in Utah, because Bob sees what I see. He says Utah should lead the way in this with regard to racial unity, harmony, and they should lead the way. And so we want to invest in that state and then have it spread out. It works here. Let's make it spread out through the nation. I think Utah is uniquely positioned with the right leadership, Cari, to make a difference. But here's the thing: you can't have a leader that's just focused on, we have to be nice to each other. We have to have to disagree to be disagreeable. And we got to, that we're in a fight. They're coming after our children. We are in a fight. It's not our side that's the problem. It's not. We are fine disagreeing. It's the other side that doesn't want to cooperate. So this whole nonsense about we got to be super nice and kind and no, we want to be happy warriors. We are in a war. They're going, when you start messing with our kids, all the gloves are off.
I have a group called TikTok Warrior Moms.
Yeah, this notion of we want the Trump supporter uncle to be able to sit at Thanksgiving dinner with the woke niece. That's BS. We don't have time for that. That's all niceties. The other side loves that. While we're doing that, they are, you should see what they're putting in these libraries and what they're teaching our kids. It's got to stop. We are in a war.
Well, and we need to be clear about that little ad from our governor, because it is not.
I didn't mention his name.
I did. I'll go there. I'm fine with it. But here's the thing: he doesn't just say this and this as equals. Had he said that, I wouldn't mention his name. But that's not what he says. He says your conspiracy theory, MAGA, whatever. And then he says your woke niece with too many inconvenient truths. And that is why I will point it out. Because while he's making the vague, apathetic person go, oh, that sounds nice, he's ultimately saying these guys are right.
Yeah, interesting.
And that is why when I first saw it, I was like, oh no, you didn't. So
Cari, I'm so glad you pointed that out. We are in a war. I just think we go about it. We're happy warriors. I mean, we don't want to be mean and cruel like the other side or go down that level. The best counter to their rhetoric, because it's all rhetoric, is solutions.
Yes.
We roll our sleeves up and we get it done. I mean, I like the opportunity of you all getting together and creating these micro schools for kids to give parents a different option than what's going on in the school system. I think that's beautiful.
We have to be careful, though. I'm very cautious about that because we already have somebody who has a social justice charter school.
Okay. Wow.
So you have to be careful who you listen to. Yeah. And there's not, Utah's African-American population is under 2%. And a lot of them lean towards that thing. And a lot of them don't, but they don't know that they don't. So that most people do have, most African-Americans do have conservative values. They believe in faith. They believe in family. They want freedom to pursue and establish what they want to. Freedom in business, basically. Those are simple conservative values that are, they don't understand that the new left is trying to destroy all of those. Mm-hmm. The first thing that they're coming to for our schools, the very first thing is that they're teaching kids that to be a cisgendered, heterosexual, male Christian is the oppressive of all oppression. And that starts in elementary school with a wheel showing the kids who's the most oppressive. That's our first thing. That's faith. Then family, we're literally showing people that it is quote unquote privileged to have a family, or it's privileged to be able to homeschool. People don't understand that this is coming because one person says, oh, it's not here. And they just go, oh, well, I respect that person. And they said it's not here. And that people don't dig a little bit deeper and realize, oh my goodness, it really, when you said a war, it's a war, and we can't just lay down and let it happen. And I feel like our state is being sold out. And the only way, and this, yeah, I promise to let you talk more.
Gary, this is fine. Great. Keep going.
But the only way I see out of that, because honestly, it seems to me that many of our schools on the administrative level are sold out. Our school board sold out. Teachers, not so much. There are a lot of teachers who will send me private messages that go, thank you, keep going. There are other officials who will say, thank you, keep doing what you're doing. They're not going to say it out in public because they know they'll be canceled, even in Utah.
Right. I'm
So
glad
our
to hear.
solution is grassroots.
Yeah, grassroots. If I were king for a day, or if I was still in the legislature, I think one of the things that I would focus on is I'm still trying to wrap my arms around, why do we need a Utah State Board of Education? Why do we need a Board of Education? Why isn't the money going straight down to the local communities, to the city council, who then gets with the parents form a council, the parents hire the principal, the parents direct the teachers being hired, and the parents direct the curriculum. That's how it used to be, and it worked. And so this whole notion of the school board, the district, the State Board of Education, all that bureaucracy has led to what you talked about earlier, 16% proficiency, which is embarrassing. So let's give it back to the parents. And you know what? And you said something earlier about parents of color. They're even more diligent. They would participate on that committee, and they would be there with their sleeves rolled up, making sure that their kids had the right environment to learn in, and then they would hold those kids accountable. No, I have faith in the parents. I really do. And we've got to go around the bureaucracy, and it has to go right to the parents. Because if the parents are making the decisions, you won't have to worry about critical race theory or social and emotional learning or all these other foolishness that's coming from these quote unquote educated experts that are certified. No.
They're certified grifters.
Certified, that's exactly right. So you bypass all that and you go right to the parents.
Right. The problem is that we're already past that in Utah. So there's very, very little parental rights. One of the things that most recently happened is a teacher decided to show her classroom videos of two men kissing. But because it was on Netflix and it was a cartoon, she showed it to them. She stopped them as soon as these, 7th and 8th grade boys are like, ew, they didn't like it. And then she shamed them for having that reaction.
Oh my gosh.
And she knew she'd be okay with it because that's the guidance, and that comes down to the weaponizing of empathy. But what my argument to that was, and I think it's valid, is that what if you are a child who's questioning your identity in that class? What if you're sitting next to one of those boys and you think they're awesome, they're a friend of yours, and you haven't come out yet? So then, which I don't necessarily agree that we have this massive pandemic where everywhere you turn, everybody's part of the quote unquote queer community. People need to look into what queer means, because it literally means crippling your mind. It doesn't just mean, open sexuality, which why are children being taught to be open to sexuality? But those are the facts that need to be presented to parents, and especially parents of color, because they're not going to be okay with it. That's just a fact. But that's not the goal. The goal is statism. And if we can destroy people and make the people who aren't okay with kids being sexualized look like bigots, then we can further our goal. So can we talk about, I only have a few minutes left. Um, what have solutions looked like that you've seen that have worked?
So one of the things that we have focused on, my wife and I, is we teach an online class to parents across the country about what they can do to shore up things within the four walls of their home. Because not every parent has the option of homeschooling their kids or affording an expensive private school. So they have to send them to public school. So what we try to empower these parents to do with knowledge that they now transfer to their kids is you have to take responsibility for educating your children and arming them before they go out into the school system so that when they get there, they will be able to discern truth from error. And so, as I said in the beginning, to me, the solution starts within the four walls of our home with our parents. We have to give them the resources, the knowledge, the stories of America, the importance of this nation and its founding documents. And when these kids are armed with those ideals, they become a force for good. We've seen it in our own home. We lived in Hood River, Oregon, Cari, where they worship the planet and they don't worship God. And they didn't believe that you weren't allowed to call it a Christmas tree. I mean, it was awful. So my wife got together with a bunch of concerns moms, and they started a cottage meeting group in their community. And so they started reading books that they could then take back home and teach their children. And then dad's sitting there, and then next thing you know, dad becomes converted. And that's me. That's the model that we found, and it started with my wife, who's the mother. And it infiltrated our entire home, and it makes a difference. My wife teaches women. She had four of them, four, I think maybe five women decide to run for the school board because they had gotten these principles inside of them. And so they ran for the school board and they won. They won. And so those are real tangible results from the work that we're trying to do. And a lot of people are doing that. They're focused on how can we empower parents to train up the next generation of patriots.
Right. So how do we bring that into specifically the Black community that's been taught, um, that has been taught basically to go against their own values? Just like it, within their homes, they believe those things I said about faith, family, freedom. But when they go to the voting booths, they believe something very, very different. And I'm not talking about voting. I know politics is
Right.
a thing. But what I'm talking about is, so they accept those things that they voted in. They voted these people in, but if they knew what they were, they wouldn't accept them.
I think the Woodson Center has the model that we should really embrace. And that's finding those gems in the community, finding those Josephs that are doing things the right way, and then matching them up with the pharaohs who have not only the resources, but also the information and knowledge, because those are the people who are at the grassroots level, Cari, that you highlighted, that are going to change the community from the inside out. Those are the influencers. What Bob would do is he would go into a community and he would go to either local church, he'd go to the barbershop, he'd go to wherever people were organizing in a community where they gathered, and he'd say, who are the go-to people in your communities? And they all would come up with the same 3, 4, 5 names. And then he would go to them. He would go to them because they were the leaders in the community. And then once you train them and educate them and empower them, then it goes out. It's healing communities from the inside out. And it takes work. It's not sexy.
Right.
It's not going to the Capitol and sitting down with the governor.
No.
It's hard work. And a lot of people don't want to do it. But that is what it's going to take. It's the Cari Bartholomew's that are doing that need to be empowered to go do this. So that's to me is a solution.
Yeah. So let me tell you what my idea is, and tell me if this would work or not.
Okay.
But I feel like this 16%, this has been just running through my head since I learned it. Okay. So my thought is that we do a book club. And we do two groups. We do a younger group and we do a like, junior high school group. We encourage them to read books. Now, I'm not a huge, I'm not really concerned about representation. I learned my values a lot through the classics, The Secret Garden, The Little Princess, like those books. They didn't have to look like me for me to go, oh, they have been through a lot of hard things and they had to work on themselves to be better. Or Sarah and the Little Princess just was always kind. These are values as a little child. But so we bring these books in, and I'm perfectly fine with reenacting the stories or getting other people to do this, right? To get these kids excited about these books. Then what we do is we give them a challenge where they read a book of somebody else's culture that's a similar story. So we start to teach unity by just take something like Cinderella. Well, there's a million different versions of Cinderella in a million different countries. So maybe the first one we read is the story is an African version so that they have quote unquote representation. But then we say, okay, now here's the Chinese story so that you can learn to feel a sense of unity instead of feeling like you must fit into your own collective. And the only thing that matters is you're hearing your own collective.
I love that. I think that's beautiful. Have you started doing that?
No, I literally I was thinking about it because I was like, okay, they need Josephs, but everything I do costs nothing. So how do I create something that they can connect to Pharaoh to? So
I think that's awesome. That's something that you could start with the homeschooling group you met with today or that you taught this week.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you the moms, it'll resonate with them also. They're our secret weapon.
Yes.
The mothers. They're our secret weapon.
But so are our fathers. If fathers do not stand up, one thing, mothers get tired. Mothers get, and also if mothers and fathers are not on the same page,
right?
They fizzle out, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It started with mom in our home, and then it didn't take long for me to get converted. Yeah. And then together, I'll put us up against anybody. Yeah, we are a force to be reckoned with for sure. And so we just have to replicate that throughout the country. And we will get there. And Cari, I'm optimistic. I really am, because we've read the book and we know who wins in the end. We know who wins in the end. We just need to make sure that we're on his side. And it doesn't take a ton of people to make a difference. It just needs to be a few of us, just a few of us. And that's why I'm optimistic. And people are waking up to their awful situation. And we're seeing increased numbers in our classes, and people are asking questions. They're showing up at these school board meetings all over. You see it all over social media. So it's time to capitalize on it. The time is right. If it's not going to be us, Cari, then who?
Right.
So the time is right. Yeah. Right. That's why what you're doing is incredible. Can't wait to be out there again with you all.
Yes, I'm super excited. So tell me again the name of the business that you run with your wife so that other people.
Yes, it's called Moms for America, momsforamerica.us. Jolene and I are teaching a class this fall called the 5,000 Year Leap. And it's basically those 28 principles that went into the founding documents, that it resonates with everybody. Doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. These are core principles that are just inherent in us. So momsforamerica.us. And I just encourage people who are listening, go to battle, but go with education, go educated, go knowledge, go with some knowledge, so that you're not screaming back and forth with rhetoric, but you're promoting and emphasizing principles. Principles are universal. Principles transcend race. Principles transcend political party, and it will resonate with people.
Al, thank you so much for this conversation. And
Cari, you're the best. Thank you. Thank you.
I just think when the solutions are in front of you, we have to show people that they're there.
Yes.
So
absolutely. So you reach out to me. I'll get those set up for you ASAP.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Wonderful.
All right. God bless you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.